Hello, everybody. I am Matthew Volm, CEO and founder of RevOps Co-op, a global community of 18,000 plus revenue operators from every nook and cranny of the world. We put on a whole slew of programs for our community members, digital events like this. We have a newsletter, a Slack group. We have courses in education, an annual conference, a formal RevOps certification. I'll try to drop some links to some things into the chat as we go through things today. But today we are here to talk about how you can go from transactions to trust and use AI to truly know your customer. And we're definitely going to be focused on some enterprise kind of specific use cases and how you can leverage AI within highly structured, regulated environments like healthcare and life sciences. And so with me today, I have Susan Thomas, who is the head of product care ops and post-purchase experience over at Jabra, and Chris Fezza, the CEO and founder at Operatus. And so I have one non-work related question that I'm going to ask both of you, which I did not inform you of in our prep at all. So here is my question. So Chris, I'm actually going to start with you since Sue is our guest. We're going to give her just a little bit of time to think about this. Yeah. One, obviously, tell us a little bit more about yourself, background, a little bit on why you're kind of an expert in this topic today. And then my question for you is we're coming off of, or I mean, maybe we're like getting into fall. I'm not really sure where we currently fall, but I want to know how you feel about pumpkin spice and whether you consider it to be like top notch or if it's just overrated and something you don't care about.
This is an easy one for me. It's something I don't care about because I'm allergic to pumpkin. So I've never had
Oh,
pumpkin spice and couldn't tell you. But I wouldn't say I miss it or have FOMO around pumpkin. It's
uh-huh.
just, a couple weeks a year is a thing, and then it's not really a
And then
thing
it goes
anymore.
away.
Yeah, the real killer is I don't know, people make salads and they put the pumpkin seeds on them or something, and they put them on the menu as pepitas, and so you have to know that means pumpkin. Neither here
Allergies
nor
are a
there.
whole thing.
It's a random one for sure, but I guess happy I don't have any other like more common allergies. But yeah, actually, so just in terms of intro, I would say not an expert in the space, at least when it comes to AI, because I don't think anyone is yet. I think we're very, very early on the journey. But we have done a couple of cool things with the Jabra team and with some other clients. I think, in my opinion, helping everyone who's working in the revenue operations and technology space take their workflows and automation the next step further and be able to do things a little bit more than they had in the past, creating this future where there is a possibility for not only augmented teammates, but additional AI teammates and that sort of thing. So it's pretty exciting and fun. And I'm excited to chat about it today.
Awesome. All right, Sue, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe a quick primer on Jabra as well, and then got to know PSL or no PSL.
Maybe I should start with the pumpkin spice. I feel like I'm all about pumpkin spice all day, all day. I think
Yeah.
I love it. I think I don't know if I like all of the pumpkin spice infused everything. I feel like there's like a world where you could go too far with it, but I do appreciate the pumpkin spice latte. I do that. I would say, yeah, so in terms of what, my kind of experience and my role at Jabra Hearing, I think a big focus for us is, obviously we sell D2C hearing aids, not only in retail but also on our website. And so we have really great, robust OTC offering for the hearing aid, our consumers that need to have hearing goals and really try to achieve better hearing experience and hearing their loved ones. I think a really interesting part of our offering is not only do we sell the product, but we service our customers as well. Our service offering is extremely important. Obviously, we are customer obsessed. How do we scale our team and our data so that we can have a much more holistic view across what our customers are talking about, what are their needs, and how can we meet them where they need to be met? So just really excited to talk about this today. We're just getting started, as Chris mentioned. I'm just really excited to share our learning so far.
Yeah. All right. I love that. I agree too. You can go just like with AI, you can go too far when it comes to pumpkin spice as well. But let's maybe start grounding everybody in the Jabra tech stack. What does that look like today? How does Salesforce fit into your operations? You obviously have some unique stuff going on with the D2C component and then also providing the customer support. So give us a little background.
Sure, sure. Perhaps we could flip to the next slide. There's a little bit more visual to talk through. I would say that our technology, this is a snapshot of what our architecture looks like. Clearly, there's a lot more here, devil's in the details here, but this is just a very simplified view. I'd say we primarily, just to ground everybody, we use Salesforce today in a really unique way. Obviously, all of our customer interactions are going in and out of our Salesforce platform. So you can imagine customer calls in. We have Salesforce Voice as a way for our agents and our sales team to interact with not only leads, but also accounts in our world. We also have messaging and app and web, commonly known as Meow, or live chat on our website and also embedded in our applications. We have an app that our customers use as well. That is an entry point to our teams. And then also customers can email us. That's another inbound channel from which customers can have inquiries of our teams. So you can see across the stack. So that's one piece of it. And then we also have our website that sits on top of Salesforce. Essentially, we have all of our orders flowing into our Salesforce environment. Essentially, we have a fulfillment team that fulfills our orders directly out of our Salesforce environment, which is a little unique and different, but it's working really well. And it brings that order activity really close to our CX teams. Our audiology teams use our platform for patient of record. All of our appointments are managed inside of our Salesforce environment. If a customer visits one of our audiologists that support 50 states, they will use our Salesforce system to record their notes, our customers' hearing goals, and really just being that patient record in Salesforce. Our teams also leverage cases, and our case flows and all of our internal workflows are also inside of Salesforce. In addition to our revenue, our transactional revenue is essentially in our system as well. So you could see that our platform is quite broad and wide, and you can almost see as I'm talking about how much data we actually are collecting in Salesforce today across these various pillars. And so this is really a foundation for us when we think about how we might want to approach implementing AI, is that we have all of this data. Now, what can we do with it?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think you've been at Jabra for almost like 2.5, 3 years now. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So has this kind of been how things were since you started? Have there been changes to the overall architecture over the last couple of years since you've been there? I guess I'm just curious how this core part has changed, regardless of the impact that AI has had, and we'll obviously get into that.
Yeah, completely. I would say that over time, I mean, when I first started, there were some disparate systems that we kind of had, primarily in the chat space as well as our telephony space. And a lot of our customer interactions or our agents were not necessarily just always in Salesforce, but they were in other systems to pick up and receive calls and then also field chats. And so we've since migrated to that, and primarily because we wanted to bring more of that insights directly into Salesforce. What we realized, what was so important to us, is that our agents needed to be able to have context of when customers called in or chatted with us, and all that context lived in Salesforce. And so it was very difficult and challenging for our teams to service our customers with the data being kind of in various places. By us evolving our thinking, we were able to really drive this one voice of our customer in Salesforce to be able to have all of those interactions at our fingertips, to really know what the customer journey was from purchase all the way to repurchasing with us, right? We really wanted to have that context in front of our customer experience team as well as our sales team when talking to customers that want to buy our latest technology hearing aid. I
Yeah.
really just kind of bringing that together for our agents was key. And in doing that, we actually ended up having this real data-rich platform.
Yeah. And one more question for you. Actually, Christina in the audience was asking if data enrichment technology plays a part into your architecture at all. I know obviously, if so, probably much different than a traditional B2B sort of company, but yeah, does data enrichment kind of play into your architecture?
Yeah, I would say that data enrichment can take multiple shapes, but I would say that one key thing that did play into it was really making sure our data models were sound, right? So as we were evolving the workflows and what our CX agents were doing and our audiology team was doing, we were constantly going and making sure that our data model could scale. As an example, one of the key pieces when we first started building, we were thinking mostly and primarily of, a customer comes to our website, they're a lead, they purchase, and that's it, right? And so, but what we're seeing is a lot of customers want to buy from us again, which is a really good thing. But in that evolution, we realized that we needed some additional structures to really understand, oh, a customer could have more than one hearing aid, and a customer could have more than one appointment with an audiologist or all of that. And so as we've evolved and grown, and obviously we're servicing quite a number of customers today, it was really essential as we were making our teams more efficient to also be considering our data modeling as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And the next kind of thing I want to get into is the challenges that you,
just because I
yeah.
feel like it's a relevant add-on to that.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, data enrichment on leads or on individuals, like that is not necessarily happening in a similar way that maybe it would in a B2B model, for example. But there are things like, a lot of the leads can come from different sources. They come through a kind of a growth marketing effort and paid media. They also come through some third-party partners and other things like that. So within those lead sources, they might have different levels of enriched data, or people might have been targeted using certain attributes anyway to begin with. So, things like demographic information, other things like that are built into, a lead score and a likelihood to purchase like are taken into account. So, but yeah, not a specific like, oh, there's like a Zoom info plugged into, enriched data on the fly, just because it's not really applicable to the model. The second thing I would say is as Sue mentioned, like, while this kind of architecture and data structure has built up over time, all these fun little icons for the different Salesforce products that, also built up over time a little bit too. So kind of using the core, both sales and service cloud platform, we've got things like high velocity sales on top. Sue mentioned the mobile in-app web chat and voice. There's obviously Shield for HIPAA compliance, security. Einstein, we'll talk about some of the AI features. And then you see the data cloud in addition to Snowflake and other things. So they're really kind of like leaning into building this robust solution across the many different products that are from the Salesforce platform.
Yeah. And I think the important part there, Chris, that you hit on and suited to is like, start with the problems that you're trying to solve, the things you want to ultimately accomplish, and and figure out a way to solve them, right? And actually that gets into kind of this next topic that I want to hit on, because I think this is definitely an area where there's a lot of questions like how do I? And a lot of times we can get things backwards where we start with a solution or a piece of technology, or saying, hey, we have an initiative to do more with AI. Let's figure out how we can use AI. But with everything, I always say, like, let's start with the problem and then move on to potential solutions, of which AI is one potential solution. There are a lot of other ways that you can also solve problems in the world, dare I say some with people as well, right? There's just a lot of different ways, but you can't figure that stuff out if you don't start with the problem. So Sue, when it comes to Jabra, what were some of those core challenges that you were facing before you started to adopt AI? And then talk us through the decision to invest, how you approached figuring out what solutions and potential options were. But again, let's start with the challenges.
Sure. Happy to do that. I think some of the challenges we had was just a lot of data. I mean, it's a good problem to have and a good challenge to have. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, we want the data. Let's get the data. Well, we had it. But the question is, what efficacy did we have that? And also, how could we drive insights from that data? One of the things that we were really thinking about is, as we were kind of evolving our platform, as we spoke about earlier, one of the areas that came really to us was just really understanding Einstein. And obviously, as we started to add more products to our Salesforce stack, like Salesforce Voice and otherwise, we said, oh, look, Einstein is something that we can explore. Einstein's something we can explore. Agentforce is something that we can explore. And it was kind of part of our offering. And so the question then became, well, how do we want to use it? And what are some of the use cases? And I think right at that same time, we started these sessions, which is really the voice of our customer sessions every Friday. And I observed, with our sales team and our CX team, they were essentially pulling various topics, right? So we'd have themes of topics, and we would be finding calls that were representative of the topics that we wanted to dive into. And so we had a lot of our leadership team on those calls, our product teams, et cetera. And I just thought about how that was pretty manual in doing that and thinking, oh, well, maybe this could be a use case that we could maybe explore with AI. I hear a lot of people like, how do I get started with AI? And it just feels like, even though it's 2 letters, it feels really big. But it's like, how do I get started? And so just really listening and seeing the various parts of your week or what have you, and saying, this actually could be really interesting. Could I try to explore using AI to help this process or help this topic or this issue that the team is facing? Is there a world where we could try it? And so because of that, we decided, how do we get more visibility into what customers are calling us about? How do we leverage AI to do that? How do we learn what customers are asking, but also what are some actionable insights from that we could drive as a product team, right? What are those things? Oh, customers are calling about not having a PDF, just like a downloaded PDF of help instructions for our accessories, as an example, right? And let's just say that pops. Well, what are some actionable insights from that? Oh, well, put those directions on the website. And it's like very clear, but it's just one example of how we're trying to go about it, and really just using the raw data of a transcript and really taking those transcripts and from chat and voice essentially, and understanding what customers, what are they asking about? What's the main reason for the call? Did they talk about anything else on the call? How were they, what was the customer sentiment? Why was the customer sentiment the way that it was? What was the reason for that? And also what's those actionable insights to our product team? So we have, when every time a CX agent either closes a chat or closes a call, they kind of set why, the reason for the call. But that's the human agent. It's influenced by the human agent. If a customer calls us with 4 different reasons, they only have one box to choose. So what are they going to choose, right? And so you're losing half that conversation by just hanging your hat on that one field. And so that one reason, or the reason why that case was closed. And so we really wanted to be able to analyze in context the transcripts and also kind of the email back and forth to say, well, what are our customers actually talking about? And to really understand the heart of their problem. And that's really how we're trying to approach it, with just really a goal of really understanding at a deeper level, what is it that resulted into that call resolution, and what made that customer happy or sad or frustrated in that call, and really just bringing that bit more clarity and transparency to our teams.
Yeah. And Chris, my next question is for you, and to tie it back to some of the stuff that Sue mentioned. I know you all at Operatus helped them design the AI roadmap, kind of implement this stuff in Salesforce. Obviously, like when you're in healthcare, life sciences, we talked about HIPAA, there's PII, like things are very different, like some of the stuff that Sue mentioned, right? Like call recording software. If I or you, Chris, wanted to test out a new call recording tool, we would just sign up, spin it up, start recording our calls today, right? When you operate in an environment like Sue does, you can't do that. There is just a lot of extra stuff with, again, HIPAA, PII, all these other kind of rules and considerations. So I'm curious about that, and for others who might be in highly regulated industries where a lot of the value that people talk about, especially with AI today, is the ability to experiment and experiment quickly. How did you approach, again, designing that AI roadmap, implementing things into Salesforce, knowing that that was the environment that you all were operating in?
Yeah. So a couple things. Even before getting into the compliance aspects of it, where we started was really with the team members. And so we had arranged a series of lunch and learns with a lot of members from product and engineering teams, including leadership, to just talk about the design and the possibilities of AI. We were focused on specifically what came with Einstein and Agentforce as kind of continuing investment in the platform. But sometimes that conversation zoomed out and then other times zoomed back in on specific tools. But basically, like to hit on what we talked about 10 minutes ago, we developed ideas and solutions to address what the business problems were. So kind of starting with that lens is one, just how we like to work all the time, but two, definitely relevant in terms of being able to get to kind of quicker value with AI. And so together with the Jabra team, iterated on those, refined the use cases, and implemented Agentforce accordingly to those use cases. And part of that was making sure the foundational data structure in Salesforce was ready to fuel the AI and to turn a pilot into something that could scale out successfully. And so I think we'll probably actually talk about how we used AI to improve some of the underlying data, as Sue mentioned, augmenting what humans are capturing as well too. So that's kind of the approach. Now, from a compliance standpoint, the Jabra team has really been very good about security and compliance from the beginning. The simplest answer is that when you have very strong, transparent corporate policies, you just have to operate with those in mind and adhering to those along the way. And so, knowing that you have HIPAA compliance that you're adhering to, knowing what type of information is classified as PHI or PII, and knowing things such as encryption requirements, retention requirements, that sort of thing. Like if you haven't done it before, yeah, it's aggressive, but I think once you have gone through it and you've got it documented, it's pretty straightforward to reference. And so kind of doing that groundwork with both kind of defining the rules, also, like I said, with Salesforce Shield and some of the other options. I mean, there's all sorts of things like sandbox data masking that you're doing and other things. But ultimately, once you have the structure set up in your primary systems, making the decision to, use Salesforce's AI tools, to use Amazon Connect for voice, like you're kind of relying on those vendors as well to offer compliant environments for you. And so that accelerates the ability. Certainly, you wouldn't just go in and plug in a new tool on top of it. So I think starting with the foundation you've already got does help you avoid some of those potential concerns going forward.
Could I add something, Chris?
Yeah.
Well, okay, fabulous. Okay, so I think two parts to this is we just kind of aligning to the tool set, right? And I think what was really important about those lunch and learns was we didn't know what we had. We don't know what we didn't know, right? So it's like we have Einstein. Well, what does that mean? And then you start unpacking Einstein and you're like, what is this? Agentforce, what is this? And what can it do? It feels large. I was really appreciated our partnership on it when we started to unpack it and really help educate folks on the art of the possible, right? It wasn't like, what are we going to build today? It was more like, okay, what do we have available to us and how might we want to use it? And so those lunch and learns were pivotal to really ground everybody on what we had, right? And what we could do. And so that was really essential into the success here. And then I'd also say that from a platform perspective, I would say since I've started, Salesforce has always been this protected area for Jabra Hearing in the sense that, we made sure that it was really strong, that the boundaries of it was very strong from a PHI perspective. And so because these were native Salesforce tools, we already were covered from that. So we didn't have to really go out and do additional security work because they were native Salesforce tools. We already were covered under all of that ironclad security stuff when it comes to healthcare.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think this ties into the poll that I launched here on which of the following best describes your organization's current use of AI in customer interactions. If you think about customer interactions, these are high stakes things, right? Anytime you're interacting with a customer where there's a value exchange, prospects, like these are the highest of importance sort of things. And when you have humans doing them versus when you are leveraging AI to do them, it can start. I feel my heart rate kind of just beating a little faster, right? It's like, oh my gosh, what's the AI going to do? Is there a human in the loop? Like you start to come up with all these things. And it ties back to a lot of what you all have hit on already, which is getting the data foundation in place and those extra hoops or requirements you need to jump through as a healthcare company, right? They all come back to the data piece. And I think we're all getting to a point where we are starting to realize and understand that you can't just throw AI stuff on top of what you've got today and expect it to work magic. You need to do a lot of this foundational work. And so I'm going to, we've got a couple of responses in here. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. It looks like most people are doing some sort of stuff with AI. So I'm sharing the results. It looks like most people are in that piloting, prototyping sort of area, but others are using it regularly to analyze interactions, and others are using it extensively to kind of assist with decision making. Sue, where would you have answered this question?
Oh my gosh, are you reading my mind? Because I literally was looking at this and going, where would we be? I would say that we are somewhere between piloting and prototyping and using AI regularly. Like we're somewhere in between that. We have some, we're obviously piloting a few things, but I also say learning, and we're trying to take it in small chunks. So I'd say we're somewhere between the second and third checkbox.
Yeah. All right. So, Chris, let's talk about this from a RevOps perspective. Governance, change management. I mean, you hit on this a little bit with like the lunch and learn, some of the other stuff, but talk us through the process when, like, what is required to actually implement kind of pre-AI, sort of pilots, right? To ensure some of that data quality, user adoption, those things that are obviously going to be critical to the success.
Yeah. So a lot of the focus initially was around using AI to help categorize and tag what customer support interactions, which previously were unstructured data, right? You got the phone calls, you got the emails, you got the chats, whatever they were, however we were interacting with the customers, we were able to take an iterative approach because we were using pre-existing unstructured data, just back test a little bit. So, we built the prompts, we were able to run them, we were able to validate the data, and that's where you get that quality control, the human in the loop validation, and then refine them further. And so when you think about going out and implementing AI use cases in the future, we don't estimate the amount of time it'll take to do something. Like we're going to go build it once, we're going to test it, and then we're going to roll it out because we know that it's best to quickly build it, test it, refine. It's like more refinement than you might normally have when you're building out things from a technology perspective. And that is still the quickest way to a result because you're able to get that real time feedback on what's working, what's not, if you are quality controlling it. And so I've seen a number of people post about this as they have more, trying to run their entire support function through an AI agent chat or something like that. Like they are daily still checking and invalidating and refining their agent to handle all the different edge cases, and as the list of edge cases gets smaller and smaller every day. We also had one of Sue's team members, a very strong product manager who used to work in the CX function. She was able to help do some of that QA to make sure that we had a high enough confidence of validity in the data to roll it out. That was very helpful. And then also on the enablement side, working with the human CX agents to be trained on the new workflows. How are they reviewing what the AI summaries are spitting out? How are they using that to inform their customer interactions? And so kind of figuring out how both work together hand in hand. And I think that's very important for adoption.
What would you say made the Jabra approach different to AI? And then any advice, like what would you tell other operators out there who might be struggling with this whole question of where to start or where to begin?
Yeah, it's a good one. I'd say you're always going to have disparate data. Just get used to it. Like you're never going to have a perfect data map, right? There's always going to be pockets of where you can always do better and iterate, make better. I think just knowing that, you could kind of say, okay, well, what are the areas or the pockets that are actually good, right? And really use that to your advantage when you iterate, back to what Chris was saying on the previous question, which is just really being okay that you are going to iterate. And the other thing I'd say that's also different for us is the agents are still dispositioning our calls and chats. Like they're still doing that one checkbox and doing that human interactive. Like they're still doing that. And we're running this in parallel with what they're currently doing. So it's kind of a nice way to have something to validate against, that someone's not doing a separate task to validate. So what I mean by that is, if let's say you go back last month and you say, oh, the main reason why customers were calling was because, I don't know, their hearing aids weren't working. If that's what it was, then you could easily take that data and line it up to what the agents are dispositioning. And you can say, okay, what's our percentage? What is our percentage, or what is our percentage alignment to that those dispositions. And let me go do some digging into the transcripts and seeing what's happening in there and what's tripping up. And let me go back to the prompts and refine those prompts. And so I think it is this very iterative journey, but I'd say pick your small piece that you want to try. Don't try to boil the ocean, so to speak. I think it could get a little hairy there. So I think just being comfortable with just trying something. Try something, find something, try it, and prove it out. We're also not doing anything now where agents are taking actions that a CX agent does. Our world's really complex. And so don't just go right for the gold. How can you become more knowledgeable of your data using AI, and then you can make better. And then there's a point where you might want to make different decisions, or maybe invest in more bot flows in your chat journey, or maybe there are some options in your IVR where you can ask customers, you can have more of a bot agent approach in the IVR. But right now we're just learning. And so it's okay to be learning and iterating, and we're already to see some goodness from that maybe isn't what you've typically hear when AI, you hear everyone talk about AI and they're always talking about agent automation and all this stuff. Yeah, sure, that's great. But let's understand our customer and understand what they need and how we can meet them, and develop those agent experiences or bot experiences around what the customer needs. It's always the customer is at the center of our decision making.
Two things I took away from that. One, nothing and no data set is perfect. You are always going to have problems. So do not use the excuse of you'll start when your data is better or perfect, right? It's never going to happen. Don't let perfection is the enemy of good, something like that. So you're always going to have data problems. So just start now. And two, I think the more narrow scope or more narrow of a problem, the more specific of a problem that you can identify as a place to start, the better, right? So you're not going super broad. You're not trying to apply AI as a really big, broad, kind of open problem. It's more narrow. Like, I have this very specific thing that maybe is manual today. I want it to be automated. How can you automate that away?
I would agree with that. And then also, as you're building projects, right, and you're doing projects, always have in the back of your mind, what could AI do for me here? You may not do it when you're doing the project, but what could AI do? And drop those ideas into a place where you could kind of really think about them over a longer period of time.
Yep. 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 And also, I forgot to mention before, but you got a fan in the audience. Chris says, "Shout out to Sue," and not Chris Fezza, but Chris Fezza. I'll ask you this question. Let's talk about kind of data unification, Salesforce Data Cloud, kind of doing that across various systems, and the impact that can have on delivering some of these personalized kind of service and insights. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah. So the Data Cloud will kind of evolve over time in terms of the role it plays. So as we talked about, like, we've always been very heavily Salesforce focused. Unifying the customer data in Salesforce is the main operating system. So, we have been using AI so far to improve like both the amount of data, like some of the conversation mining related to each customer interaction, to continue to make that the source of truth. So where Data Cloud really comes into play, it's not as much, at least for Jabra right now, bringing data from outside, but it's more like organizing the data so that it can be accessed with greater speed by Agentforce. So a little bit in the weeds, but important, when you're implementing AI, is like, the more context, the better. And there are different ways to do that, but also the processing speed, right? You can't have, you don't want your queries to be taking a lot of tokens. You also don't want them to be taking a lot of time. Some of this stuff needs to be happening in real time because that's how the work is being done. And so, we'll use Data Cloud to set up some of the knowledge articles and other information that we're feeding into a kind of a RAG format, so it can be accessed with greater speed by Agentforce, and will help suggest resolutions directly to the customers as they're interacting, and even to the CX users on Jabra's side, so they can know how to answer in more real time. And so that's kind of what the future with Data Cloud looks like.
Yeah. And Sue, I have actually two questions for you. These are across two slides, but I'm going to ask them both together because I think they tie in together. So how are you we hit on this a little bit. So how are you leveraging Salesforce and Agentforce today to analyze these customer interactions? And then as you look ahead, like what's next when it comes to Jabra and AI and case deflection, proactive support, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I did mention that we are, and one piece that I wanted to also say, which ties to a little bit of how what our approach was, but when I think also of AI, I think about prompting, but also summarization at its core. And so what we did was we didn't just say, okay, we want to summarize all the customer interactions. Tell me what the number one reason is that a customer is calling us, right? Like you could ask that question and say, I'm sure a lot of our senior leaders are like, okay, give me the top 5 reasons. And then that takes on a bigger body of work. And so what we first started with is how can we just take a call when it's done, tag it, prompt call AI, get the responses back, and then tag the actual record in Salesforce. And that's what we did. So now we have these analyzed interactions that can easily be joined to the voice call and to the customer, right? And so that's what we did at its most rawest form, right? And so now when we are analyzing that, we can then say, oh, well, actually, let me go open up that customer call and see what the customer is saying. Oh, wait, this one's popping as a highly frustrated customer. Let me go in and click on that and open it up and actually listen to the recording or see what the agent notes are, right? So it's more of this discovery element. And then once we get this kind of in a place, we can start to say, okay, now how can we summarize all of this and be able to bring some key themes out? And so it's really kind of how we want to approach it. So I'd say like that's what's next is really doing more of the summarization aspect to your question. We're using it every day, right? So we have our sentiment analysis, we have actionable next steps from our calls. Our CX agents can see that. Really, like what I was calling out, which is our voice of our customer, and really starting to enrich that idea of a more systemic voice of our customer approach. And we are using this now for our weekly meetings, which is really exciting, right? It's like when
Yeah.
we saw 3 months ago when we saw, oh, you know what, this could be interesting. Let's use AI. Now, all of a sudden, the folks that are running those calls are now using analyzed interactions and being able to find themes and actually looking through the data, and they're actually finding the themes they want to talk about in a faster pace. So even just for that one meeting, we're a lot more efficient now because now we're using those analyzed interactions to as the source of truth. And so
Yeah.
that's been really exciting. Did I answer your question totally? Okay,
No,
good.
I think so. And the thing that I think is important that you mentioned, going back to how people can get started, is there's a lot of potential with all the different things that you can do with AI today. That can be very overwhelming, especially if you try to think of doing all of them at once or just think of the universe of possibilities at once. You don't need to do that. But what you can do is by starting narrow and starting today, you start to unlock a way of thinking that as you now start to encounter future problems or current problems that will exist for you next week, like some of these other things that you talked about, Sue, right? Like using them in your meetings and other things like that. You now start to see how you can apply the technology to those other things. And that's kind of the point, right? Like you're not supposed to go out and be able to fix all this stuff all at once, nor will you be able to. But by starting and applying that sort of framework, again, problem, then solution, that's what you can truly start to unlock. And then you can look back at, like you're doing, Sue, probably the last 3 months, 6 months, year, and you're like, wow, previously we were doing things a very different way, but that's really how that stuff starts to add up.
Oh yeah, I would 100% agree. And I'd say also exploring other ways of using Agentforce as an example, like on the IVR. Right now we are looking at opportunities for more automated bot responses for some of our most frequently, or I guess not most frequently, but most sentiments, main reasons why customers are calling us. We can essentially have quick answers for them within the IVR using Agentforce as an example. So there's a lot of really good use cases that we're going to explore next year and beyond. Analyzed customer interactions was something that really opened the door to us thinking a bit more broadly on AI in general and just a more tactical way to approach it.
Yeah. And Chris, I want to ask you, because obviously you and Apparatus you work across a whole slew of industries. You have a lot of different types of clients. So from your perspective, what are you seeing as it relates to industry trends in, highly regulated, kind of structured industries like healthcare and life sciences? What are some of the things that companies that might be operating at that level need to look out for? Like I said, what are some of those things that you're seeing?
Yeah, so the biggest ones are for sure relying on more enterprise partners and existing providers, right? Because that point earlier makes it so that compliance issues are less of a thing. A lot of folks starting with what I'd consider more like the transactional AI, such as you're talking about like IVR, case routing, other things like that. Like, hey, how do we appropriately determine and categorize where this should go? People are trying to get like a little more proactive. And so, that means that there is a combination of taking data that is owned data, so data about your customers and your interactions, things you're doing, also data that is external, publicly available data, and frankly, even I know someone asked about enrichment before, for companies that are buying data, especially when they're looking to use that in a sales process, whether they're trying to sell to providers or health systems or something like that, like those are areas where you can have the AI kind of use it to like personalize and to kind of create more informed outreach and things like that. So you really have to think about what are the business outcomes. Is it more on the customer acquisition side? Is it on the service side? Like every customer has different goals, right, of where they're focused. Is it an efficiency play and a cost play? Is it is it a growth play? And so use that to kind of dictate how you're trying to use the technology. But there are, frankly, as Sue mentioned, like think about it with everything, and it's going to apply better in some scenarios than others.
Hmm.
So use that to inform your approach.
Yeah. Sue, do you have any lessons learned around kind of governance, adoption? We talked a lot of things that have worked. Like we talked about the lunch and learns and like some of these other things that you've done, some of the use cases where you started the tagging of calls and then you move on to like the other interactions. I'm always curious about stuff that doesn't work though, or also where you've decided not to maybe apply AI. So I don't know, any lessons learned on like, oh yeah, we started going down this path or we tried this, that didn't work, or oh, we thought through it this way, decided not to maybe invest over here. Instead, we decided to invest over there. Any lessons learned, gotchas, things like that that you'd want to share with folks here?
I don't have anything that comes to mind, but I would say, let's see, lessons learned. I would say we started off, I think we learned a little bit on how to approach. I think using that lunch and learn was a way for us to stick our toe in the water and see what people's understanding was of AI in general across the org. I just think everybody comes from various knowledge points of what's available, what isn't. And so that lunch and learn really sussed a lot of that educational gaps out. So it wasn't so much like we didn't do something, we did something and we shouldn't have done it or something like that. It's more of thankful that we did approach it that way.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about kind of everyone's experience with AI and what AI meant for them. Everyone has their own version of it in their head and what it means and how it translates. And I think that lunch and learn really helps suss that out quickly. So it's not so much what we did and it didn't work. It's more about how we approached it and how that was helpful. And keep
Chris, anything to add there?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily specific to Jabra, but I found so far just across clients that analysis, like actually doing the analysis itself, is really not the best place to start with AI, in my opinion. So, like, having it capture more data, categorize data, like that sort of thing, great. But doing the analysis, I think there's still, you can kind of do it just as quickly and probably get more exactly what you want on the first try if you're still just kind of
Yeah.
using your standard reporting tools, data warehouse, BI tool, that sort of thing. If you have a knowledge of analytics and the tools to start with, I've just found that the time it takes to get to what you want, as well as some of the, I don't know whether it's hallucinations or just incorrect calculations on things, sometimes make it really not worth it for that use case right now.
Oh yeah.
I'd
Where you
also,
wind up,
sorry, go ahead.
let you go first, Sue, and then I'll add on to what Chris
Yeah,
mentioned.
I know. I was just saying what Chris is saying is absolutely right. It's like the analysis paralysis. We had over 250,000 interactions we tagged, right? So you could
Yeah.
just imagine people are like, well, I don't know if I trust that data because it's, we tagged all this stuff. And I was like, well, how about we learn through consumption and adoption? And instead of just saying, okay, we're going to have this block on our roadmap that says we're going to analyze the AI output, and start to evolve our thinking over time. And so I love what Chris, you mentioned there, because it could have been 3 months of trying to validate or invalidate instead of just trying to invalidate all 230,000 calls or what have you. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I've seen the same thing where the tagging, this is a great example, like turning unstructured data into structured data. Great. Then saying, now I want you to tell me well, what percentage, right, is like this versus that versus this other thing. What I found is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But in all of those cases, because you don't know, you wind up going back, checking, doing math, and probably spending more time than you would have if you just would have done the analysis yourself. So yeah, do that yourself.
Yeah, and interesting to say too, this data could be directional. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not financial data, right? Financial data is where you want to be perfect and laser precision, On this, you just want to have some direction. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep. All right, y'all. So we are at time. You saw on that last slide, I had a kind of free AI assessment. The Operatus folks have a Salesforce strategy channel in the RevOps Co-op Slack group. They're on LinkedIn. They've got the free AI assessment on their website. They'll share some links to that with folks after this. So tons of resources there if you're interested in Salesforce and or AI. And then obviously RevOps Co-op, we have tons of stuff on our website as well. But that is all I got for you at the top of the hour. I want to give a big shout out to Sue and Chris for joining and dropping some knowledge. Thank you to all the attendees out there as well. Have a great rest of the Tuesday, everybody.